Okay, good evening, everyone. This will begin the February 2nd, 2022 Rochester Preservation Board hearing. And at this time, I will turn it over to the chair.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 2nd, 2022 Preservation Board hearing for the City of Rochester. My name is Christopher Coretta. I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. I'm an associate real estate broker living in the historic Grove Place Preservation District. I also sit on the executive committee for the Landmark Society of Western New York, as well as serve as a trustee on their board. We're meeting tonight under extraordinary circumstances. Due to state and local emergency orders requiring social distancing, we amended the Rochester Preservation Board bylaws to allow us to conduct this hearing as authorized by the governor's and mayor's emergency orders, and to waive other requirements in order to proceed with this online hearing. These waivers permit us to hold this hearing by teleconference with no in-person attendance, allow applicant presentations by teleconference, and require all public comments, both in favor of and opposed to the application, to be submitted in writing, by email, or by hard copy document mailed to the zoning office, or deposited in the secure Dropbox located in the link entrance of the City Hall. All written public comments were all required to be submitted by 5 p.m. yesterday. Although this hearing's been altered for some of our normal procedures, many things remain the same. All the normal notifications for this hearing, including mailed notice, publication, and the posting of notice, were followed. All the normal timeframes for applicant presentations and comments in favor of and opposed to the application remain the same. And most importantly, this board will hear, review, and make decisions about all the applications, same diligence, and using the same standards as required by the zoning code. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that when a case is called, the applicant will be allowed 15 minutes to present. Keep in mind that members would have visited the site. The applications are posted on the city website and available for the public to review. All applicants were advised to ensure that their applications were complete and included all information that they intend to present at this hearing tonight. As the application is presented, staff will, as reasonably as possible, show the pages of the application the applicant is addressing. Following our normal procedure, the board members may ask the applicant questions. If during the hearing, the board determines that substantial new evidence has been submitted by the applicant during the presentation or is given in response to questions by the board, the case will be adjourned to the next announced hearing date to allow the public to review the new evidence and to submit additional comments. After the applicant's presentation is completed, staff will read into record any comments received after the comment deadline that are not already posted on the city website. After all the comments have been read, the applicant will have 5 minutes to offer any testimony and rebuttal. The board will commence deliberations and voting after the public hearing of each agenda item, with the exception of any applications that are being adjourned. Please also note that if your case is approved today, a written decision will be mailed to you within 15 business days. The decision will inform you of the next steps to complete the approval process. Before we open the first case, please note that we are all volunteers on this board. I'd like each of the board members to confirm their presence for purposes of establishing a quorum for this hearing and to introduce themselves and mention their area of expertise. Start alphabetically. We'd like to start with Ed Kane.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Kane. I'm a resident of the East Avenue Preservation District.
Thank you, Ed. Next would be Gerald Gam.
Good evening. I'm a professor at the University of Rochester of Political Science and History. I sit on the board of the Landmark Society of Western New York, and we're residents of the East Avenue Preservation District.
Thank you, Gerald. Bill Marshall. Bill, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Bill
Thank you.
Marshall, live in the historical district, Susan B. Anthony.
Thank you, Bill. And David Matthews.
Good evening. My name is David Matthews. I'm an architect and I live in the Highland Park neighborhood.
Thank you, David. Victor Sanchez.
Good evening, Victor Sanchez. I'm a planning construction project manager, and I also serve on the Preservation Advisory Council for the Landmark Society.
Thank you, Victor. And our co-chair, last but certainly not least, Kirsten Solberg.
Hello, I'm Kirsten, and I'm an architect, and I live in the Browncroft neighborhood.
And staff. Matt, would you like to start?
Sorry, I couldn't find the video button. Yes, my name is Matt Simonis, and I am interim staff to the Preservation Board.
Thank you. I guess we'll go with Kate Powers next.
Hi, Kate Powers. I'm support staff for Matt in the zoning division.
Thank you, Kate. Tom Worth.
Tom Worth, I'm from the City Law Department and one of the counsel to this board.
Thank you, sir. And Andrew Creary.
Andrew Query. I am also in the City Law Department and co-counsel with Tom Worth.
Thank you. We also have an intern with us tonight, Aaron Weiner. Aaron?
Hi, yes, my name is Aaron Weiner. I'm a student at the University of Rochester and an intern for the zoning department.
Thanks, Aaron. I think that's everyone. Thank you, everyone. And I'll turn it over to Matt Simonis, if you'd like to call the first case, please.
Yes. All right. Case number 1 is file A-033-2122. It's a certificate of appropriateness at 1010 East Avenue, located in the R3 High Density Residential District and the East Avenue Preservation District. The applicant is the architect, John Page of Barrow Architecture, and the purpose is to remove perpendicular parking off the main entry driveway, to reorient the service drive, to remove existing angled parking off of the existing service drive, to add 7 parking spaces to the existing parking lot, to install dumpster screening, to place gravel service drive within the lawn, and to replace overhead electrical link with a buried service. And it looks like we have Chuck and John. Is that right? The 2 of you, Chuck?
3, also Mark Bear.
Oh, Mark, he just came in.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So there's
And-
3, Mark, John, and Chuck.
And that's Chuck Hanrahan.
Chuck Hanrahan, yes.
Okay, I just need to swear each of you gentlemen in. So we'll start with John Page. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll go with Chuck Hanrahan. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mark Bayer. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, gentlemen. And we are ready for your presentation.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Hanrahan, one of the trustees at Asbury First United Methodist Church. And also presenting today will be John Page from Barrow Architecture and Mark Baer from Baer Landscape Architecture. The project at 1010 East Avenue is one of 4 selected and developed from our campus-wide study, which began in 2012 and looked at many things that need work across our campus. The purpose of this project is to consolidate our outreach ministries while rehabilitating 1010 East Avenue and providing full accessibility. The main project at 1010 was approved by the Preservation Board in the fall of 2018. And separately in 2018, we engaged Baer Landscape Architecture to study circulation and tying our 3 buildings of our campus together using plantings. However, none of the findings from that study have been implemented as of yet. Also separately, the Preservation Board approved the establishment of a community garden in February of 2021. Like everyone, COVID-19 caused us to put many things on hold, including design work and fundraising. But in February of 2021, we were able to complete our fundraising for the 1010 project and authorized Barrow to complete construction documentation after a significant hiatus. In the spring of 2021, we asked Barrow to also incorporate the community garden, which we had already started, as well as some elements of the Baer Master Circulation Plan into the site work so that we would have a comprehensive plan. Given that pricing was rising very fast, we asked everyone, including Barrow, to move at full speed in an effort to lock in our construction costs before we were forced to stop again and raise more funds. Bids for this project were received in the late fall of 2021. So that's a little history, and I'm going to turn it over to John Page to talk about some project modifications that we'd like to put before you tonight.
Thank you, Chuck. Just to restate, the previously approved project for the rehabilitation of 1010
and the addition to 1010, including a welcoming center, connecting link, and adjacent terrace, plus a new parking area. Everything from the north side of the building or the center line of the parking area that was presented remains the same as was approved. No changes have been made to those items, except for things that we've identified relative to the parking area and the area north between the parking area and the playground. So we've taken the opportunity to, with the help of Mark's plan and the willingness of the church to include this work in the project, we've taken over the remainder of the unfinished lot that is the west lot of the Asbury campus. And the recommendations that we've incorporated into the project are to remove all parking off of the drives, including the main north-south drive and the service drive, and to limit the parking to the other side of the new drive that we had previously submitted with our project, leaving space for the current phase of the community garden and the expansion phase that's expected to come along shortly. We are reducing and reorienting the paved service drive that heads off to the northwest and relocating and putting a screen around the existing dumpsters. And we're going to remove the narrow gravel service drive that's running north-south that was going to remain in that north section of the parking area. We think there's a lot of benefits to this. It gives us control of the site. The original project was limited in the area of the site we were using, and we were very conscious of how we were addressing the undeveloped area. With this consolidation of parking, we need to remove some more trees that are in the center of this open area. We plan to replace those trees with new trees and extend the west border plantings in conjunction with this work. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Mark to just explain the rationale for the study that he did and confirm that we, incorporated aspects of it into the work that we're proposing to do.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everybody. Back in 2018, as has been mentioned, we did this site circulation study. The goals of the study really were to improve both pedestrian and vehicular circulation and parking, and with the overarching goals of making things more safer and more efficient. And dialing into the 1010 site, I think eliminating that perpendicular parking along quite a busy drive lane between 1010 and the church made a ton of sense to us. I think that's one of the main things that we were looking at in this area, and creating very clear and defined pedestrian crossings between the church and the 1010 building, making drop-off more efficient. And then, of course, replacing the perpendicular parking with this off the drive small parking area that will serve 1010 and all of their programs, along with more minor recommendations, which included getting the dumpsters relocated off the sight lines for the drive. And as John had mentioned, giving an improved access to a service building in the northwest corner. And I'm happy to report that Barrow and John and his team did a very nice job of kind of taking these recommendations and developing their site plan pretty much in sync with what we had proposed. I think they did a really great job with very minor deviations from our recommendations. And I think one of the things that we knew going into this, when we were making this proposal, that the likelihood of tree removals were definitely there and present in our minds. And we did, in addition to this parking and circulation study for the church, we have done a full tree inventory and master plan recommendations for existing tree canopy on the campus, which there's many trees on this campus. And in this area, we were not too concerned with our recommendations for these changes, because we knew that in that lawn behind 1010, principally were black locust and sycamore maple. 4 locust in this particular zone we're focused on tonight, and 1 sycamore maple remaining. And all 4 have structural issues that we are aware of, and being geared to evaluating historic landscapes is something that we do on a regular basis. We knew that these were not historically significant trees. They're volunteers by nature of these plants, these plant species. They are on actually DEC's list of invasives. And given their condition and structural issues that I mentioned in the letter that I had sent to the board, there's cavities present and heavy leans in some of the trees. And by nature, black locusts do often have a lot of storm damage. It's not the tree for this site that has a lot of pedestrian activity, and with the parking and drive lanes. For all those reasons, we think these improvements in safety and circulation and serving this new program, the removal of these trees is warranted, and then with proper replacement planting, I think we can, the church can do a great job of bringing back some new trees for the long haul, and kind of work more in keeping with the character of the landscape elsewhere on the campus, which has in other areas of the campus some absolutely spectacular period specimens. And I think that's something that can be done here as well. So that's what I wanted to say tonight. And I think we're all here to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. It was very clear. We'll start with questions from board members, and I guess we'll start with Kirsten Solberg. Questions?
Hello, thank you for the thorough presentation. I think pretty much most of it is very comprehensible. My only question is, you present 2 layouts. I'm assuming your preference is the 12 spot with the dumpsters further to the rear. Is that correct?
Well, actually, this is the 2018 master plan, and John's plan is, I think, in the next sheet or 2 beyond this, but it's very similar to the 12 space plan on the left, but John can speak to that.
Yes, we have a slightly different layout than Mark's, but we moved the dumpsters as was recommended. We reoriented the north service drive a little bit so that backing in is a straighter shot.
Can we pull up the plan that we're reviewing for approval?
What page do
Can
you
we
want?
pull that up?
What page?
It's
It'll be at the bottom right corner. There'll be a page number, and I can pull that up.
It's a sheet or two after that. I think it may be the, John, is that it right there?
Oh,
Yes.
that was it. Yeah, you passed it. There you go.
Okay, so this is what we're, okay, so there is no alternate. This is what we're approving.
Correct.
So for the record, it's page 37, the plan on page 37, the record, that's the proposal.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. No doors to the dumpster enclosure, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Victor Sanchez, any questions for the applicants?
No, this is pretty self-explanatory. I have no further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Victor. David Matthews, any questions?
No, I do not have any questions. Thank you for the plans and presentation.
Thank you. Bill Marshall, any questions for the applicants? Bill, you may be on mute. I'm trying to find you.
No questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Gerald Gamm, any questions?
So I have one question. I did visit the site, but everything's covered in snow and there's construction going on, so it was a little bit hard to follow. So could you just clarify which, on this image, the one that we're all looking at, which are the mature trees that you're proposing to remove?
They don't show on this particular drawing, which is the completion drawing. There's the trees are located in the 3 or 4 parking spaces on the north side of the new drive that are at the west.
Is this image here, page 36, more helpful, and we can point on here?
No, because that planning drawing also shows new trees. If you bring up the photograph, that would certainly show you. Well, actually, this drawing here on the right, there's the trees that are indicated in there that are sort of lightly drawn in. Those are the area where the trees are located.
Got it. So the trees.
What page is this?
So I'm looking at page 44, and I'm looking at north of the, or I should say, this expanded parking area here.
They're roughly in the center of that drive.
Got it. Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
actually quite helpful. What I found ironic about this proposal, it is one of the most carefully thought out proposals that we've seen in a while. And clearly, I mean, everything we're seeing related to the work at Asbury Methodist has been incredibly impressive and very well thought through. The irony was, it was actually quite difficult for me to figure out what exactly was being proposed here in terms of which trees were coming out and the changes that were being made. So my follow-up question is about the parking area. And I'm not even sure if we approved this exact parking area before. I know it's sort of moving. Do you need all those spaces there? That's my question, because there is this enormous parking area behind the church. I can imagine needing 3 or 4 spaces for handicapped parking, but that's a fair amount of asphalt right behind 1010. That could otherwise be a nicely landscaped area. And I also wonder, as somebody who also grows vegetables in the summer, whether or not it's going to be good having the community garden surrounded effectively on 3 sides by asphalt.
So what we're doing here is we're removing 16 parking spaces and we're replacing them with 12. And so we are reducing the parking at Asbury and we're adding some asphalt essentially the center part is there. Do they need it? They have a desire to have parking that's associated specifically with the welcoming center and the outreach ministries that are being consolidated in the building. And that if you have the guests that come here and the staff that volunteer to work here would be best served in the programming that we have in this location. So Chuck can respond to this as well. You're right, they do have a large parking area in the rear of the building, which is shared with in a nice bit of efficiency with a business that's on university during the week, which is part of the time that this area is used. Chuck, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. So during the weekday, about 3/4 of our parking lot is used by Gleason. So we only have access to the front, maybe quarter or so of it. The proximity to 1010 allows a lot of the volunteers to park closer to their destination. A lot of the folks who volunteer here maybe aren't quite ready for a handicap spot, but the walk to the main parking lot would be prohibitive to some of them. That's both the volunteers and the guests that we serve.
Okay, that's very helpful. The only other question that I had asked, any concern about having asphalt surrounding the community garden, especially in the heat of summer, just the difficulty in keeping the plants hydrated?
Well, it's a raised bed garden, and one of the things that we're providing is a water hydrant that'll be out in the area that will help with that situation. And the new trees that we're putting up, presuming that this proceeds in time, will help to modify the overall environment in that area. So Chuck, you might be able to speak on behalf of the community garden folks, and or Mark.
Yeah, I mean the parking spaces that are right now right next to the community garden, as well as the driveway, did not present a problem in this past growing season. In fact, we were rather surprised by how well everything grew. The garden really took off, and I think was extremely productive. We're not concerned really about having that additional parking because we've moved other parking away from it. We don't think that the proximity to that asphalt is particularly an issue. We actually get a fair amount of shade there from the building and then from the trees. So it hasn't been an issue.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm next. I have no questions. Everything's been answered. For my questions, Ed Kane, any questions?
No, my questions have all been answered too.
Great, thank you, sir. With that, if board members have any further questions from board members? If not, we'll go over to Matt. If there's any public testimony, Matt, that hasn't been put on the website that you wanted to read?
No, there was nothing for this case.
Great, thank you. Then we will technically close the public portion. And I'll go back to you, Matt. Did you want to talk about our deliberations and how they work?
Yeah, absolutely. So at this time, now that the case has been closed, the board members will move into deliberations. They will discuss and deliberate and render a decision on the case. At this time, there is no participation by either the applicants or members of the public.
Thanks, Matt. We'll start with Kirsten Solberg. Kirsten, your thoughts on this application, please.
I am ready to approve it. I think the site plan is improved, taking the parking off the main drive, and the materials are all of a quality that we're looking for.
Great. Thank you very much. Victor Sanchez, your thoughts, please.
No, I definitely agree. I think that it makes sense to move that parking away from kind of the road there. Yeah, so I'm ready to approve as well.
Very good. Thank you, Victor. Dave Matthews, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think the quality of the design and site development has been enhanced by moving the parking off of the access drive. I like the garden expansion and with Mark's bare statements about looking at the overall concepts for the tree placement. Removing the trees was not a huge issue for me as long as there's a plan in place long-term for other trees to be added. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Bill Marshall, your thoughts, please.
I like what I hear. Don't have enough knowledge. So I go along with the board.
All right, great. Thank you. Gerald Gam, your thoughts, please.
I'm with Bill. I like this very much. I'm glad to support it.
Okay. Thank you. I'm next. I think it's a very elegant solution. It works. It fits within our guidelines, and I'm ready to support it 100%. And thank you very much, guys, for this great presentation. Ed Kane, your thoughts, please.
My thoughts are that I too am ready to support the proposal as presented.
Great. Great. Thank you. Can I get a motion from someone, please?
Sure. Put forth a motion for file number A-033-21-22 to approve the application as it stands.
Second.
A motion has been made by Kirsten Solberg and properly seconded by Gerald Gam. I will call on each board member for their vote. We will start with Kirsten Solberg. Kirsten, do you vote yay or nay for this motion?
Yay.
Kirsten Solberg votes yay. Victor Sanchez, do you vote yay or nay for that motion?
Yay.
Victor Sanchez votes yay. Next would be David Matthews.
Yay.
David Matthews is yay. Next would be Bill Marshall.
Yay.
Bill Marshall votes yay for the motion. Gerald Gam.
Yay.
Gerald Gam votes yay for the motion. I am next. Christopher Coretta. I vote yay for the motion. And Ed Kane.
Yay.
Ed Kane votes yay. That's unanimous 7 votes. Passes. Thank you very much. And Matt Simonis, when you have time, we're ready for the next case.
Great. Case number 2 is file A-034-2122. It is a certificate of appropriateness located at 95 Troop Street. Property is located in the R3 High Density Residential District, as well as the Cornhill Preservation District. The applicant is the property owner, Milos, who is with us tonight. And the purpose, which was discussed during the pre-meeting tonight, is just the legalization of 9 windows, nothing to do with the shingles that were on an original draft of the agenda. So it's the legalization of the replacement of 9 windows.
Matt, before we start, I am abstaining from this case, as I stated before.
Okay, great. So you can just stay on the call, but just turn video and sound off.
Okay, great. I did want to also just get on the record that all board members, except for Bill Marshall, did visit the first case. I missed that on the first case. With this case, again, all board members have visited the case except for Bill Marshall. And Milos Vajvidic, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. We're ready for your presentation.
So it's a very simple. What happened is, I guess, back in the 70s or 80s, the egress stairwell that was installed in the on the outside of the building, on both sides. I think it's east and west. Yeah, you can see that in the picture. When they were installing it to make it firmer and stronger, they would install these steel reinforced concrete lentils, and they would go across the profile of the upper opening of the window. And we didn't know this at the time of getting the certificate of appropriateness back. I believe it was in 18. So we decided to get a smaller window underneath each lintel of that was blocking the opening, and then we would insert a third transom, which is much thinner, and it would be flush in line with the lower part, with the lower portion of the original of the actual window. Yeah, right there. This was all done. I was informed of this by phone by my contractor. I guess it was a solution to that we decided on, and yeah, I guess we did something to make it as to look as aesthetically as aesthetic as possible. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Not much more to say. I'm open to any questions if you guys have any.
Great, thank you, Milos. I'll open it up to board members, and we'll start with Ed Kane on this one. Ed, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I think in my opinion, the solution they came up with was reasonable, and I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. I would be next. I really don't have any questions. It was pretty self-explanatory. Gerald Gam, do you have any questions?
Milos, I do have a couple of questions, and I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the work you're doing with this building. The first question is the material of these windows. It's the exact same material as all the other windows?
No, the material of that window is wood with a single glass pane. So the actual windows were they are fiberglass on the outside, and these additional transoms on top are wooden.
Okay, but the windows are fiberglass on the outside?
Oh yeah, the
Okay.
windows of Marvin integrity, just like just what I was approved for in the certificate of appropriateness back
Right, that was my question. So these are the same materials, same windows as you're using everywhere else?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my other question is, I'm trying to understand what's going on in the interior of the building. So there's this steel beam or this concrete piece, this lintel that went in the 1980s.
Well, I believe, whenever the fire code called for these egress stairs, I don't know how far back that was. I'm assuming it's the 70s or 80s.
Okay, so my question, and I'm just trying to think through it, because visually you have these transoms of different sizes all across the front of the building. So they do look a little funny, and it may be that it was necessary, but would it be possible, instead of having a double hung window where the upper sash and the lower sash both move, would it have been possible to do a single hung window with a fixed, where it's just the full opening is still one window, and the upper half of it is fixed in place and can't move, and the lower half is the only half that could move? And so that way, from the outside, it still looks like a double hung window, because there would only be two pieces to it. There'd be no transom, but from the interior, the upper half would simply be locked in place.
Gerald, this is exactly the same question I asked my contractor whenever I was made aware of this. And no, it's not possible because of the thickness of the actual window. So the concrete lintel is so thick that it wouldn't fit any regular size window. So this transom on top is very thin. It's a thin layer. So that was really the only solution. I was the architect of this solution.
So Milos, given that you'd already thought of the question and you'd explored it with your contractor, at least for me as a board member, there's not more I can do than tell you that was the only question I had. So thank you very much, and thank you for thinking this through.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Bill Marshall, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you, sir. David Matthews, any questions for the applicant?
Didn't Dave excuse himself?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Thanks, Ed. Victor Sanchez.
No, no further questions.
Thank you, Victor. And Kirsten Solberg, any questions?
Nope, Gerald asked my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll go back to Matt. Is there any public testimony that you would need to read that hasn't already been posted on the website, Matt?
No, no public input.
All right, great. Then we will officially close the public portion. And we'll go back to Matt about deliberations.
All right, thanks, Chris. So this will begin the deliberations portion of the case for 95 Troop Street. There is no participation by members of the public or by the applicant at this time.
Very good. Thank you. And we will start with Ed Kane. Your thoughts on this, Ed?
My thoughts are that this was a reasonable solution to the problem that came up, and I'm ready to approve.
Okay, thank you. I'm next. I would completely agree with Ed. I think it's the best solution he could have come up with. Gerald, your thoughts, please.
Yes, I agree too. We already approved the window material, the window style, and given the constraints that the applicant was working with, this seems like the only feasible solution.
Great, thank you. And Bill Marshall, what are your thoughts, please? Whoops, you're muted, Bill.
Okay. I say I follow the lead of the board because there's more knowledge here. Well, I haven't seen it.
All right, thank you. And David Matthews? Oh, geez, I did it again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know. I have to cross him off of my list here. Victor Sanchez.
No, I agree with what has already been said.
Very good. Thank you. And Kirsten Solberg.
I agree with everyone.
Okay. Let's see. Gerald, would you like to give me a motion, please?
I would be honored. I'm going to make a motion regarding case number 2, file number A-034-21-22. The request is to legalize the replacement of 9 windows, that we accept the application as presented. That we approve the application as presented.
Thank you. A motion has been made by Gerald Gamm and properly seconded by Ed Kane. I'll call on each member for their vote. We'll start with Ed Kane. Do you vote yay or nay for this motion, Ed?
Yay.
Ed Kane votes yay for the motion. I'm next, Christopher Coretta. I vote yay for the motion. Gerald Gamm.
I vote yay.
Gerald Gamm votes yay for the motion. Bill Marshall.
Yay.
Bill Marshall votes yay. I'm going to skip over Dave Matthews and we're going to go to Victor Sanchez.
Yay.
Victor Sanchez votes yay for the motion. Kirsten Solberg.
Yay.
Kirsten Solberg votes yay. That's 6 unanimous votes. That does pass. Thank you very much, Milos and Matthew. We're ready for the next case whenever you're ready.
Great. Case number 3 is file A-035-2122. This is a certificate of appropriateness request in concept review only at 1100 South Goodman Street, located in the planned development district number 21, the Vistas at Highland. The applicant is Angelo Ingracia, who is the property owner, and I will let you know who is all here tonight in just a moment. And the purpose is to construct 2 4-story multifamily buildings, to remove existing trees, to reconfigure existing parking and routing, and to construct additional parking areas. And as I noted, this is conceptual review only. And in terms of the applicant team tonight, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total, I believe. There's Matt Tomlinson, Ange Ingracia, Ryan Kelly, Steve Cullum, and Steve is it just you from Hanlon? I see two people on here.
David Hanlon is also on.
Oh, he's not connected to that one. Okay, so Dave Hamlin is also here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I have to swear all of you in. So bear with. I have Angie Gracia, I have Ryan Kelly, I have Dave Hanlon, I have Matt Tomlinson, and I'm sorry, who am I missing?
Steve Cullum.
Steve Cullum. Okay, thank you. And I guess I will start with Angelo and Gracia. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Matt Tomlinson, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Dave Hanlon, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ryan Kelly, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And last but not least, Steve Cullum, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, gentlemen, we are ready for your application.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we actually have
Yeah,
one more.
before, oh, we do.
We do have one more?
Yeah, is Art also on for your team?
Yes, Art Inalucci. Yep.
Okay.
Let me move him over. My apologies. And one quick other item, Kate, do we know about the other two unnamed folks?
No, I don't have them in my manifest, so I'm not sure how you would like to proceed.
I'm sorry to interrupt this team. We have two people on that we don't have reflected in any signing up to speak. And before we go further, I want to make sure we find out where they are. There's an individual named Sally who is logged into the call. Sally, I'm moving you over to a panelist. If you could unmute yourself and let us know what you're here for.
That was me on my iPad. You could, I'll disconnect that, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just want to make sure we're not missing anybody.
Nope, that's me.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I think we are all good. And Art has been moved in, so you can swear him in, Chris.
Okay, Art Lantalucci, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And I did also want to say that all board members except for Bill Marshall have visited the site.
And this is Tom Worth from the Law Department. Just to establish the context of this, the review here is of 2 apartment buildings and the parking around it. And it's an element of the planned development district that was previously approved in 2019. So the planning or the preservation board's review today is limited by the fact that the heights and the placements of the 2 apartment buildings and the placement of parking and of landscaping has already been established and approved. So their review tonight is confined to the nature of the materials and everything else in the aesthetics, but they're not reviewing or being asked to ratify what was already approved about the locations of the buildings and the parking lots and access roads.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Gentlemen, we're ready for your application and presentation.
Great, thanks. My name is Matt Tomlinson with Marathon Engineering. I'm going to start by introducing, I know everyone has heard everyone's names, but Ange Ingracia is the owner developer here. Art Antelucci was involved very heavily with the establishment of the PDD early on and kind of predates my involvement with the project. So he's here to help keep me on the straight and narrow. Steve Cullum and Dave Hanlon are the project architects and are going to speak relative to materials in the building or material design questions that the board may have here shortly. And then Ryan Kelly is the landscape architect on the project and going to spend some time talking through the detailed proposed planting plan. So I'm just going to give a quick overview. And Matt, I think the overall plan for the site is, I think, page 74 potentially on there. Sorry, I did not memorize the number. But if we could go to that one, 41, I'm sorry, page 41.
41, yeah, you got it. Hold on one second. Bear with me, it's loading. Okay.
Sure, great, thank you. So I was brought on about halfway through this project after the establishment of the PDD. And what I just want to give a quick overview on before handing it over to Steve and to David is some of the modifications we heard and read through some of the recommendation letters that were given by this board prior to the approval by City Council of the PDD that reflected the elements of vehicular focus versus pedestrian. And that really was the focus, given that the roadway being Campus Drive and the building locations were established as part of that PDD approval. But the design team spent quite a bit of time taking a look at the potential or opportunity for pedestrian connectivity throughout the campus and making the architecture of Strong Hall an arrival point. There's some event space users in there. There was parking in the original plan all along the front of Strong Hall. We've tried to create, and Ryan's going to speak to this a little bit more, a destination and arrival point, not just for folks driving in and out, but also for pedestrians, and connecting some of that common space for the campus feel as we also started to think through the details of amenities that would be provided for residents and for visitors as well. And so these changes in the geometry and layout that you are seeing here on this plan was submitted to the manager of zoning in two instances, July of 21 and September of 21, as we tweaked this to ensure that we were staying within the confines and parameters of the PDD approval. And we had a letter issued to us in September of 21 by Suzanne McSain, who was then the acting manager of zoning, confirming that this stayed within that PDD limitations. And I know Tom was involved somewhat with that. So I just wanted to update the board. I know they have not seen this since, I think, 2019, but we did bring into consideration or take into consideration several of the comments, of course, leaving out the pieces relative to the PDD establishment that were approved by City Council, such as building location and alignments. I just wanted to bring the board's attention to total parking space, lot coverage, that kind of thing within the frames of the zoning. Up to 330 parking spaces are allowed by code. This configuration is 274 parking spaces and includes several parking spaces. I believe the number is 42 underneath building 200. So we have attempted to limit as much as possible the lot coverage within the development area. I don't know if this board is aware, but the large majority of the front yard to Highland and out to Goodman in the front yard of the buildings to the exterior streets were placed into a conservation easement, therefore limiting the ability to provide any type of paving or buildings within that area as well. And that has been respected as part of the plan. So with that, I want to turn it over to Steve to fill you guys in on the materials and advancement in the building design for your consideration.
Thanks, Matt. Members of the board, we've worked on many projects throughout the city, but few are as special as this one on the Colgate Rochester Divinity Historic Site, the historic campus. We've worked with Ange and Matt and Ryan over the past 2.5 years to work out this building and to really enhance the north side of campus. And we've done this by increasing the pedestrian connectivity, as Matt mentioned, by introducing a forecourt in front of Strong Hall's entrance, by eliminating the large parking lot north of Strong Hall, by placing smaller parking areas throughout the site. So we're proposing 2 48-unit apartment buildings, which is less than we'd originally come to the board with 2 years ago. And they're sympathetic in style to the collegiate Gothic Strong Hall, Trevor, Eaton, and Montgomery House. And designing these buildings, we've utilized similar massing, proportion, rhythm, and building elements to those found on Strong Hall and Trevor, Eaton. We've designed elements, the entry, for example, that mimic parts of the existing building without being direct copies of the Strong Hall elements. And we've introduced contemporary elements at the corners of the building to make for a building that's a little bit more diverse in style. The massing of the proposed building also complements Strong Hall successfully in terms of height and depth. Both Strong Hall and our buildings are approximately 43 to 45 feet from the first floor, finished floor, to the eave, and about 67 feet deep. We've chosen to mimic the rhythm of solids and voids on Strong Hall, having regular repetition of openings and punctuating with strong vertical elements. In terms of roof shape, the proposed buildings are again very similar to the most prominent of the existing buildings, utilizing gable roofs with parapeted gable vertical elements. You've received our materials board, so I won't talk too much about specific materials unless you have specific questions. But we're proposing a brick that's very similar to the Strong Hall brick in terms of color and texture variation, while being more similar to the brick of Saunders and Andrews Halls in terms of color. And we feel like this brick will really tie the whole campus together in terms of materials. Interestingly, at least one public comment noted that the buildings should be similar to 933 University Ave, another building we designed in another preservation district. And we've actually utilized the same brick on that building as we are proposing on this one, and we're using a similar simulated stone. I'm thinking that the neighborhood will be quite pleased with the overall building design once these are completed. Ryan, if you'd like to talk about landscape design now, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Do we have a landscape plan to pull up? Or I'd be happy to share my screen.
Yeah, no, I can pull it up. What in the bottom right corner of the package that went out on the city's website and went to the board is a page number? Do you know if you have that corresponds with it? If not, I can pull it up. It looks like it starts on 66.
I do not off the cuff.
Bear with me, the documents are large enough that my computer doesn't load them fast enough. So hold on.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, I believe 66 is the correct number there, Matt.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt.
Start here. Here we go.
Perfect. Yeah, good evening, board. Ryan Kelly, glad to be here. Thank you for your time. I'm going to speak to our overall landscape goals, our amenities, and also our signage package. Really, the overall landscape goals were to upgrade the overall campus landscape with a more sustainable approach while tying the entire site together. And what I mean by sustainable approach is specifically reduction of lawn through the campus corridor, coming in with low water usage plant material, and most importantly for us, really trying to enhance the ecological benefits and biodiversity compared to the previous plans. Our second goal was to create a sense of place using plant massings to highlight important nodes through the center campus. And then lastly, enhance the pedestrian experience. I know that was important. It was important feedback from the last round of comments. So some specific data comparison from our plans to the Costage plans. I think you'll be pleasantly pleased. We have overall 108 tree removals on the previous plans. We have added 6 tree removals. We are not in the tree removal business, but due to the new site planning, we've had some parking impacts to that. And as a result of the 6 additional removals, we've really enhanced the replacement quantities. We've moved our tree count from 46 to 50 trees. We've moved our total ground plane, shrubs, perennials, and ground covers from 319 to 5,500. So we've had a substantial uptick there while really increasing the diversity of our list. Specifically, Matt, if you could go to the next slide, that'd be fantastic. Really overall from our landscape approach, we tried to create massings through the center core. The second sheet would be perfect, L1.2. And as Matt Tomlinson had mentioned, we tried to really complement the architecture in front of Strong Hall, adding green space, but really not trying to take attention away from the beautiful architecture. So all here is to complement and at the same time creating outdoor rooms for a mixed use of demographic. And that'll tie me into really our proposed amenities. So our client has a number of different customers or client type on this campus. So really we're trying to introduce new with old. And so we've come in with a grill station, and I don't have my pencil, so I'm going to try to navigate locations. So we tried to locate a proposed grill station just to the southeast corner of the new building 101. It's centrally located, but at the same time, well protected from neighboring views. And again, this is really to try to enhance the outdoor environment. Secondly, we proposed a dog park. If you could go to the next sheet, Matt, that'd be great. Thank you. In the upper left corner, there is an existing basketball court asphalt surface. We thought this would be a great repurpose into a dog park amenity, well protected, great canopy coverage. And we've enhanced some landscape square footage around that to really create a nice buffer. And at the same time, work with snow removal operations. Lastly, we will, I'm really going to mess you up here. Can we go back one page, please? And I'm going to speak to the Trevor Eaton Courtyard. We were pretty excited to try to activate the Trevor Eaton Courtyard behind the existing garage. This was a bit of increasing amenities to hotel guests and expanding the interior space. At the same time being sensitive to the original design intent. So we really tried to make this more of a garden approach to the original designer. So we are proposing some outdoor living. So we have a proposed fire feature, proposed water feature to really create some white noise through this and amplify through the courtyard. Lastly, this is more of a general amenity, but we really tried to create a plaza feel in front of Strong Hall. So we have a mixture of seating opportunities throughout the entire campus. We have benches, planter pots, outdoor living, 4 top tables. And at the same time, we feel strongly that we did a great job of blending in with architecture and having the amenities there, but at the same time, making them disappear, not to compete with the existing architecture. That's it for amenities. I'm going to jump into the signage package, which will be my last.
Okay, Ryan, I don't mean to, we're getting close on the time, and I know that we've been taking a little bit of time scrolling through, so and I know you have a lot to show us, so I don't want to be difficult, but if you could just keep that in mind, I'd appreciate it.
You got it. How about, should be 2 more pages. We'll be quick here. Two more. Last one. There we go. Okay, so quickly on the signage package, because this is new. Our goal was to really pay homage to the landmark and the upward focus of the architecture. We really tried to reuse the existing monuments at the front entry. We have directionals at key nodes. We have post-mounted signage to denote resident parking. And at the next meeting, we will show our temporary package. So this communicates our permanent signage package, and I wanted to make that clear. And that concludes my piece. Any questions from the board?
And just for the record, that signage material that we were reviewing, the drawing number is 72.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to open it up to board members for questions. We'll start with Kirsten. Kirsten, any questions for the applicants?
You've got me going first on this one. A lot to digest here.
I could start with
my understanding is, no, I'm going to try to cover some ground. My understanding is that we're not discussing the parking layout, and we're not discussing the site design. We're discussing materiality and really the plantings of the site tonight. I'm going to start with just what I have at the top of my list. I know there was some mention of the brick. My first question for the architect is this a thin veneer brick, or is this intended to be a full veneer brick?
This is a full face brick.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, one of my questions was about the color, because it's a tricky thing, because you don't want to necessarily match what you have there. I couldn't really tell with such a small sample, but I was kind of like, yeah, it's not really here or there. It doesn't really match one building or the other building. So you take it another way and just go totally outside of the context so that you're not trying.
Like an iron spot, brown, kind of shiny, would be interesting. It would tie in nicely with Strong Hall and Trevor Eaton. And it would be a more modern take on that. So that would be something that we could explore and present a rendering of.
I would love to see the two. I know it's tricky, and it would just open conversation to what's appropriate, because just the small sample that we saw, I just wasn't convinced it. I'm not saying it's not a nice brick, but if it's the right one for the site.
Sure.
One question I had about, I know you're trying to take quotes from the existing building, which makes sense, but give it a kind of a modern interpretation. One thing that was driving me crazy was the existing building, and even in your logos, you're showing a pointed arch, but on the actual building, you have a semicircle. Any explanation for that?
Where specifically are you referring to?
Any facade photo will show what I'm talking about. Well, you can see the logo, how you have a pointed arch for your logo. The existing buildings all have pointed arches, but your proposed building has a semicircular archway as it's is kind of a highlight to the building.
Yeah, on the main entry, yes.
Kind of throughout, and even the upper, you can't see where I'm pointing. It's highlighted several times.
Yeah, I don't have a great reason for that other than wanting to keep the Gothic arch of Strong Hall more special and be kind of subservient to that. Realizing that we aren't like a church or something, whereas the Divinity School, would have been teaching pastors and priests to teach, so they were probably getting that religious aspect, whereas we aren't really.
I mean, I might be interested in seeing that, because I don't think of it as a religious element, just a period of architecture that you're quoting.
Sure.
Just putting that out there. Another thing that struck me looking at the existing building is that there's cast stone throughout, and I'm not completely sure what the existing windows are, but they've kind of almost developed almost like a bluish patina to them. And it looks like the material that you're proposing for the storefront throughout matches the cast stone. Wondering if you explored something a little different, either darker or a little bit of a contrast that would add a little bit more depth to the facade.
Yeah, I think we could explore that. Certainly, that blue is really nice on the existing.
And I'm not saying it has to be blue, but just something to differentiate between the cast stone and the storefront.
Sure.
I don't love Juliet balconies. I understand the economy behind it. I think you did an admirable job trying to break up the mass of housing. The main facade, I didn't know if there was any opportunity to create real balconies that actually created a projection that would break up kind of the mass along the length of the front building.
I think in the comments from public and 2-3 years ago, they specifically asked for balconies to be removed.
Okay.
So it'd be hard
Okay.
to go back and add those.
Okay. And then my question's about the site, and Tom, you can tell me if this is off topic. I know there was a lot of concern about site lighting. Are we at the code minimum for what we're showing for site lighting? Meaning more so the 18-foot larger site lights.
Yeah, good question, Kirsten. I can speak to that. So what we are proposing on our plan is the exact same fixture and mounting height that was in the original 18 feet mounting height to the post top style light. And while we have not relocated, but tweaked the locations to minimize the amount of wall mounted fixtures, where there were quite a few wall mounted fixtures previously versus pole mounted throughout the site on the new buildings and adjacent to where Strong was. We felt that it was much more consistent from a design standpoint to have a consistent pole rhythm versus a couple of arm mounted building lights in lieu of having a pole 10 feet away from the building. So other than that slight change in a couple of locations in the new parking lots, it's essentially the same as what was previously proposed.
Okay, so the response for people being concerned about an increase in lighting is really the exchange of building mounted to pole light.
That's correct. One other item that I would point out just for the board's consideration, and it is something that I think is worth talking about, is Matt, I don't know if you can switch to, let's see what page this is, sorry. Let's see. I'm looking for the lighting plan. I apologize. I lost my spot here in the file.
I'm looking for it as well. You must be in.
I think it's about 45 or 47, somewhere in that neighborhood. 48, 47 is the number in the lower right-hand corner.
Yes, I see that. Okay, hold on one second.
The original plan for the lighting, yeah, one more down, Matt. Perfect. The original plan for the lighting had post-top lighting, replacing some of the lighting along the pedestrian route coming up from South Goodman Street, and there was no lighting proposed along the campus drive. And that was kind of out of rhythm of the proposed lighting as you got further into the site. That drive is very dark in the winter months. And so we sequenced the lights to be consistent along Campus Drive all the way down to South Goodman, again, using that same 18-foot maximum mounting height, and placed them in such a way that it still shed some light along that pedestrian route, but really lit up that arrival point. Some of the other concerns that were raised were relative to vehicular speeds down South Goodman and visibility from that Campus Drive as we add more residents traffic to it. And so that's a change from the original, not in the number of lights or the level of lighting, but the location of it along or shedding light on both the pedestrian and vehicular instead of only focused on the pedestrian.
Okay. And then, and I apologize that I didn't find this specifically on the plan. There was a lot of back and forth talk about a retaining wall that, if I read your documents correctly, it indicated that one change that was made was it was now a 4-foot retaining wall, but the letters I'm reading from neighbors say it's a 10-foot retaining wall. So I'm just trying to clarify what is it?
Yeah, sure. So there are several retaining walls on the site.
Okay.
I'll talk about those quickly if that's something that I should
And
be
if
talking
this is
about.
outside of this discussion,
No, this isn't outside the realm of what is up for review.
okay.
Great, yeah, so let me just step through them real quick and Matt, maybe the
Yeah.
grading plan, which is
Yeah, I'm trying to get there. Bear with me one second. There's,
I think if you go back to the site plans, they're all on the same sheet, so that would have been one above the lighting plan we were just looking at. So number 46, I think.
6.
One more down, sorry.
No, it jumped for some reason. That's the grading plan.
Yeah, perfect. I can use this to talk to it. So there's 3 main walls, Kirsten, to answer your question. There's one as it's, sorry. Yeah, there's one north of building 100. Okay, so that's as it backs to the hill. And we actually terraced that wall and pulled it back closer to the building in order to limit potential impact to the trees in that hill. That was a comment that I think has been raised several times. So that's a terraced wall that the total height is consistent with the original design, which is approximately 10 feet, but we've split it into 2 walls to try to eliminate an alley. Yep. And then the second wall is a little bit further to the left, just cutting off of the plan there. That wall originally was proposed for a consistent 6 feet high all the way across in the original plans, but it tied to an existing wall along the president's house, which was higher. And that wall actually was 6 feet at the ends and approximately 8 or 9 feet in the middle. We've lengthened that wall and reduced the majority of it to about 4 feet. But at its tallest point, it does rise to 10 because the slope varies through that area. So average height is essentially the same as what was there previously, but it has lengthened a little bit and varies from 4 to 10 feet in height. And then the third and final significant wall is in the lower right-hand corner of the site over near Trevor Eaton. And that was originally proposed up over 16 feet in height at its lowest. You can see how much grade change there is between that parking lot and the lower drive aisle through there. And we were able to pull that parking a little bit closer to building 200, which compromised a little bit of the outdoor little patios that we're providing for the ground floor level. But we were able to shrink that height of that wall to 12 feet at its highest point, and the majority of it is 6 feet or lower. So again, trying to be sensitive to the views kind of from the exterior of the site, we did everything that we could to lower. So that one went from a maximum, I believe, of 16 feet originally down to a height of 12 feet at its maximum.
It looks like the one closest to South Goodman, there's efforts being made to landscape along the length of that wall. And
yeah, that's correct.
okay. I'm going to ask one more question, and I'm going to let other people talk. I'm going to flip back over to architecture one more time. The windows on the first floor, I'm assuming all the first floor units are on grade, and I know we're trying to be height sensitive, which is part of that decision. It looks like they're very close. They're almost all the way to the floor. I know in theory that sounds lovely, but I wonder what the reality of those windows would be. You know, people are gonna, I just know how the blinds are gonna be shut on that first floor, and if there was any consideration of changing the window size just on the first floor, which would also be a reflection on the existing building.
Patio door openings, they are all the way to grade, and then the other windows on the first floor are 16 inches off of grade, I believe. I don't have that number on me at the moment, but between 8 and 16 inches off of grade. But we could explore shortening them a little bit to try to eliminate a little bit of that.
I'm just thinking practically. And also it looks like I'd have to look a little bit more, but not that you want to quote everything from the existing building, but it seems at least, that might give it a little bit of a variation along that front.
Sure.
All right, thank you. I'm going to let other board members speak, but I appreciate your answers.
Thanks, Kirsten. Thanks, Kirsten. We'll go to Victor Sanchez. Victor, do you have any questions for the applicants?
No, I don't. I think Kirsten covered a lot of the questions that I had, so thank you for that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Victor. Dave Matthews, any questions?
Yeah, I'm going to concentrate my questions on the north side of building 100 and then the adjacent west parking lot. Is there an opportunity to use building 100, the north facade at the lowest level as partial retaining, just to pull back some of the grading and impact on the slope there? Obviously, you've seen all the neighborhood comments. It's an incredibly sensitive area, not only from being the top of the hillside and the amount of trees that get disturbed, but also impacts of how close the building and parking is to the houses below. So I guess that's a question. Is there still more work? And I appreciate all the work you guys done, in between the historic buildings and new buildings. It seems like there's a lot of efforts and responded to some of our comments. So I certainly appreciate all that. I just wonder if there's some additional work that can be done along that north side of the existing woods and slope to not only alleviate some of the concerns, but reduce some of the impact and excavation and tree removal in that area.
We did actually explore that and came to the determination that we would end up removing pretty much the same amount of trees, and the inside of the building would end up being like a basement, unfortunately. But in terms of workability and construction, having that area that's flat to work from is almost necessary to be able to build this building.
Another point I'd like to point out, Steve, is the crest of the hill is higher than these retaining walls. So we're actually on the downward slope of the crest there. So no matter what we would have done, the suggestion is a valid one, but it wouldn't change any impact on the neighbors by doing that. And it would just be not a good construction solution for the buildings and the residents.
Yeah, we'd eliminate daylight opportunity. We have pulled those retaining walls, as I mentioned, about 4 feet closer to the building than the original plans that were approved as part of the PD. And for the parking lot as well, I know we're not talking about parking, but same thing. We've really fit that in with a couple of things attempted to be balanced out. One being, there's been some comment relative to the view as you approach coming up Campus Drive, because the drive is oriented kind of towards that parking lot. And so we needed to get that parking lot up in the air and be able to landscape that bank in order to provide a buffer and a visual focal point of the buildings as you come up the drive, not a parking lot. And so I think that this solution really balances out the concerns of the neighbors with potential impact to the historic drive coming up, and also siting there, as well as providing a nice apartment experience for a ground floor. They are going to be looking out their windows at a retaining wall. There's only so much we can do there, but it does allow for some natural light along that north face as well.
Okay, and counter to that, I'd go back to Kirsten's point about the windows and going up. Do they need to go all the way down to the ground level? And if they were pulled up, could some of that be taken into the retaining area? But so we appreciate you moving the retaining back. As far as the campus drive goes, that's a vehicular solution to move the parking lot back. As noted before, the strong influences of being more pedestrian than vehicular. Is there still a chance to curl that parking lot back around the drive, pulling it back from the top of the slope? You can see where my sensitive areas are, and you're going to have all that from the neighbors as well. I'm just trying to see if there's still some work, as this is a conceptual review, to pull that parking lot and whatever landscaping and buffering that needs to be done for vehicular views at 20 miles an hour. Great. I'm sure there's still some solutions, but just to get a little bit more buffer off of the crest of the hill. I just wonder if there's some additional work that can be done to explore some possibilities to not only alleviate some concerns from the neighborhood, but also preserve some of the natural setting that's there that is obviously going to be disturbed one way or the other by this project.
Yeah, I respectfully, the parking lot's in the same location and that is an area that has not changed from the original. I think that it really is in the best balance point as Campus Drive rises. And the reason that the east end is a little further off of the drive is because the grade continues to drop down to the drive from that point, and we needed more room to make up that grade without adding another retaining wall into the site through that area. So I do think that has been thought through and placed and designed in such a way that it's in the best possible location for that, consistent with the previous approvals.
What we could do, Matt, is show a photo, a rendering, illustrating what you're talking about from that vantage point. The grade rises, like you said, so you're really looking at a bank of landscaping. The cars are not as apparent as it looks like on a site plan. So we could do, rendering illustrating that.
Okay, no further questions from me.
Thanks, David. Bill Marshall, any questions for the applicants?
No question.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
It's Angie Grassi. I just wanted to go back to Dave for a second, just to make sure I understood what he said. Dave, are you suggesting some additional landscaping to the northern part of the parking lot? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think one way or the other, alleviating some of the concerns of the neighborhood behind it, just to create as much buffer as you possibly can. I think that's all I guess we could ask for, is that the houses below are not seeing headlights, or shining, parking lot lights. It's just, they're being compromised a little bit and I think the as much as you can do to provide buffers up there would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan, you could speak on that, obviously.
My comment or response would be, appreciate it's a great question. I think our team has done a great job on the site side. From a landscape standpoint, I'd agree with David Hanlon. So we have, just with the natural topography, I think that helps alleviate 99% of those concerns. From a landscape standpoint, we've treated, we need to be mindful of snow removal, but we can talk to our team about adding some additional landscape. My only response to that would be, it's very, very difficult to grow anything under Norway maple. So there's a lot of competition along the tree line, but we'll take a look at it and we'll come back with solutions if it presents itself.
One thing we could do too, Ryan, is do a site section to that parking lot to show how the topography helps shelter that parking area, and that the hill behind it and the trees, and like Ann just suggesting, we can provide additional elements to screen the parking, but I think a site section and a rendering would help illustrate what's happening there.
Agreed.
All right.
Certainly, David Hanlon through the building too, and showing that the retaining walls and everything are lower than the highest element.
Sure.
You know, it's not explained in the drawings and the packets right now. It may have been in 2019 actually, but I was a little disappointed to see that there wasn't more study in this package with your new development, that especially because all of the neighbors' concerns, and if you're addressing those things, and in fact it's not as big as a concern as maybe has come to light, then you know, please explain those things in site sections and such, so maybe some of those concerns are alleviated.
Yeah, we'll definitely add that section as well and help illustrate the points. That's a good thought.
And I know there's been some question, and maybe Steve and David can speak to this. We definitely don't want to reopen things that have been closed, kind of to Tom's point, or previously approved. So the building location, the height of it are all consistent with those previous approvals. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong there.
That is correct. The building heights have not changed at all.
But I think the section will help show that retaining wall improvement, you know, to David Matthews' point. And so we'll get that exhibit out there.
Okay. All set, David?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to Gerald Gam. Any questions, Gerald?
I do. I have a couple of questions. So first, just a clarification. So on the image that we're looking at right now, there is a tree line just behind building 100 in the parking lot. Is that, right now that's a wooded area. Is that going to stay a wooded area?
Yes, the tree line that's shown there is the clearing limit consistent with the specific individual trees shown for removal on the previous approval. And so that is the limit of removals consistent with the previous approvals.
Okay, Matt,
So
that's
all-
really helpful, because one of the concerns that neighbors have raised suggests that that area is going to be clear cut. But what you're saying is that tree line, in fact, represents, you know, consistent with individual trees, that tree line represents the area where the cutting down of trees stops and the existing wooded area remains in place.
That is absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, other questions I have, many of them have already been asked by my colleagues, but I did want to clarify a couple of things. So the brick that's being used for the building, these are just regular full-size bricks that we placed in one by one with mortar.
That's correct.
Okay, and I wanted to ask, just because at some point it's in somewhere this material referred to brick veneer, so I just wanted to be sure we were talking just about bricks and mortar. In terms of color, I know Kirsten's already asked about this, but I would be more concerned about finding a color that matches well with Strong Hall than a color that matches well with Saunders and Anderson. Strong Hall is the dominant presence on the campus. And part of what's interesting about the brick on Strong Hall is it's variegated in color. You have lots of light flecks and then some darker flecks. So even if the brick on these two new buildings were relatively uniform in color, you could pick a color from Strong Hall and still not match Strong Hall. And so I just want to put that out there as Kirsten's already raised questions about brick colors, something to think about before we do a final approval for brick.
Sure.
Let's see, the cast stone. So I actually didn't pay attention, but the stone on Strong Hall is not stone, it's cast. It's cement. On Strong Hall, that's made to look like stone.
I don't know for sure, but I believe that it's cast.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you're doing something similar with building 100 and building 200.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my final question, oh no, I had two questions. One question is about the balconies. Like Kirsten, I don't love the Juliet balconies, but if that's what we have, I would push you hard to consider doing them in genuine wrought iron. I think that if they're going to be a decorative element, anything we can do to make it a more beautiful decorative element would be welcome. Is that something that you've considered?
We have it, and we can consider it further.
Okay. My final question is the windows. So what is the material for the windows?
The upper floor windows are a vinyl window. The first floor patio entries are aluminum storefronts, as is the main entry.
Okay, so the upper windows, so we typically don't approve vinyl windows in preservation districts. So I don't know how that affects approving something that's new construction in a landmark. But typically we would not approve vinyl windows. We would approve aluminum clad wood or fiberglass clad wood. Have you given thought to using a window other than vinyl?
We have, for the cost of construction, we've gone with the vinyl for now, but we can consider further options.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerald. I'm next. I just have one clarification. A lot of the neighbors mentioned that the building heights were actually higher in this proposal as opposed to the first, and you did say that it is the same, and I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so the previous proposal showed a height of 55 feet. That was measured to the midpoint of the gable, which is what the city code calls us to do. And the average grade plane on building 200 is different than 100. So that building height is actually 59 feet from average grade point to average gable. But the first floor to ridge and eave is the same, and all of it is underneath the required zoning requirement of 60 feet.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
My colleagues asked all the other questions I had. Ed Kane, any questions?
Oh, thank you. My questions have also been asked by others. I have no additional questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Board members, if no further questions, I'm going to go to Matthew. Matthew, any public testimony that hasn't been posted on the city's website that you wanted to add?
No, there is, excuse me, no additional public input that has not been posted on the city's website. Everything is on the city's website. There are a number of speakers tonight that are here to provide oral testimony, though.
Okay. I'll swear each of them in. If I could just get names, that would be great. And I did also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say what we can do is just bring them in, swear them in, they can do their testimony, and then if board members have any questions for them, just like as if it were an in-person hearing, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. And
maybe it'd be easier to swear them in each as they appear in case someone doesn't appear that thought they were going to appear or appears out of order.
That's what I mean. We'll have them as they come in, we'll swear them in, and then
I did want to
that's what you're going to do in the first place. But I think it'd be better to do it individually as they come in rather than try to anticipate as a group up front.
And I did want to mention also there each person has 3 minutes to comment. So I could just keep everything rolling. Okay. So did you want to bring the first person in?
Yep, the first person is John Morgan. John, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and the chair will swear you in.
Hi, John. John Morgan, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? John, are you with us? You maybe are you?
John, in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom box that's up. Yep, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I swore you in. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great. You have 3 minutes. We're ready for you.
Okay. Thank you very much to the Preservation Board. As a lifelong resident of 182 Gregory Hill Road in Rochester, I feel like, I can see the proposed property from the window of my house, and I feel like I can address this issue with the utmost objectivity. If this project is approved, the increase of traffic will be horrific. South Goodman Street is already congested and car accidents are common. With the proposed additional traffic, the flow of vehicles will increase to a level the neighborhood cannot handle, and accidents and fatalities will inevitably increase and abound. Also, this project will ruin the beauty of the crest line I have been seeing my entire life. I have lived in this house my entire life. My grandfather, Herbert F. Adam, had our house built in 1928, and my family has lived here for 3 generations continually. My family has been paying taxes on this property for 94 years. Often the sewer overflows in the basements in this neighborhood, and with the addition of this proposed building project property, the sewer overflow and clogging will only be made worse. Additionally, there'll be a strain on the RG&E lines, the water lines, the bus line, and the dangerous North Hill eroding. Your architect, Steve Cullum, called this a historic site, and this will denigrate that history. The neighborhood is not pleased with this project, and removing these long-living, healthy trees will be awful, and there's no reason for it. The builder won't have to live with this project, but we will. This is a most unwelcome monstrosity. And as mentioned, the building project will ruin the crestline view and the beautiful row of trees on the hills I can see from the front window of my house, and this will be a shame. So please do not approve the building of this 2 4-story multifamily building on this historic site. It would decrease the majestic quality of this great Rochester landmark, and there is no way the proposed buildings can compare to the historic beauty and quality of this long-established architecture on the site. There are other locations, much safer and nearer to I-490 and other travel routes, that do not cut through a densely populated residential neighborhood. It's not safe, and that will not compromise the natural beauty which 1100 South Goodman Street affords to all Rochesterians. So please, the Rochester Preservation Site District, please do not approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. The next person.
Next is John Griffith.
John, do we have you on? Can you hear us?
Hold on one second. There's a slight delay from the time they move over, so just one second. Yeah, John, it's you now.
Hi, can you see
Hi,
me?
John.
Let me turn my video on. So.
Great. John, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great. And I'll hit the timer, and we've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be brief. So I'm something's going to get built up here. One thing that I think needs to be improved in this proposal is there's these beautiful photo renderings of the site in the proposal, but they're all kind of a bird's eye view, like you might if you were flying a drone around. And I think the developer should provide renderings from the adjacent streets like South Goodman and Highland Avenue and Highland Parkway, Greenview, and Summit Drive. I think that would help everyone visualize just how intrusive or not intrusive the buildings are going to be and how it will fit into the surrounding neighborhood as opposed to the views that are currently in there. So I would ask the Preservation Board to request those renderings to be created. That's kind of a major thing. The other thing that I would be concerned about or would ask, and maybe this is too early, but if there's been any study of the Lumieres in the parking lot illumination scheme, so that the lighting task will be confined to the parking lots and not spill over into the adjacent neighborhood, or that there'll be a direct line of sight from someone's house to the actual radiation source inside the Lumiere. I think that there should be a study done like that as well to make sure that those Lumieres are properly designed. And then maybe a little off topic, I will say the previous comment about the sewers backing up is a real issue in the neighborhood. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. The next person, Matthew.
Next is Raj, and Raj is here.
I'm here.
Okay, I just need to swear you in, Raj. And please forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Raj Singaravelu.
Singarvelu.
Singarvelu, thank you. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
We're
Thank
ready
you.
for you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead. We're ready for you.
Thank you, members of the Preservation Board, for taking the time to hear all of us tonight. I had some comments with regards to the scale and the height and the directional access, but I believe that's not part of this conversation. So I'm going to have to switch what I'm going to talk about. But one of the things I want to talk about is with Mr. Griffith just spoke about with the renderings, because I think having renderings, because I know that something's going to be built there, but having renderings of the proposed construction from various vantage points, and not just during like the summer or the fall, but particularly in the winter, so that we can get a sense of what that looks like, what these proposed buildings will look like when there are no leaves on the trees. And also, how does that impact the lighting? Because I think when there is, the full tree line, it's in full foliage and everything, that'll potentially block some of the light that the neighbors on Highland Parkway, Greenview, and so forth will see. But I think in getting ready for today, I looked at the comments that the Preservation Board mentioned and said in 2019, and Strong Hall is supposed to be the primary focus, but it still seems as though that with this height, particularly if maybe you're driving north on South Clinton, when you're like in Taos Plaza, when you crest that ridge, I see the tower and I see the roof line of Strong Hall. I can't help without these renderings think, am I going to see the roof line of 100, the roof line of building 200, particularly now in the winter? But I think whatever, and I think Board Member Matthews mentioned this also, anything that can be used to create a buffer between the tree line and the existing structures, or the proposed structures and the tree line and the parking, would be greatly appreciated, because something's going to be built. But I wish there was some more communication with the neighbors in the neighborhood in these last 2 years before, finding out about a potential roof deck and stuff like that, we just found out by looking at the plans. But yeah, I think that's all I got, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up will be Keith.
Keith Abel, Keith, can you hear us?
Keith, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
There it goes. Okay.
Great. Keith Abel, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great. Thank you. We are ready for you. I'll hit the timer for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm Keith Abel. My wife, I'm a neighbor of Raj right now, honestly. So my wife and I have lived in Highland Parkway for 32 years, and we back up to, the building 100 sits just south of our property, right in the middle of that building, to give you some orientation. I was going to talk a little bit about the height of the things. It does bother me a little bit that there was a July 10th meeting in 2019 with this board that 5 of the 6 of the board members had great concerns about the height and its relation to the Strong Hall. And they had no cross-sectional drawings at that time. And now as I figure it right now, that the buildings are at, or I think building 200 is slightly above the peak of the roof of Strong Hall. And there was no re-review of this done by this board after their July 10th meeting. So, to get the PBD improved like that, it kind of bothers me. I am disturbed a little bit by the addition of the rooftop deck being added. It was not in the original drawings, original plans. That was from the PD 21 that was approved. And there's also the element of that new dog park, which I guess, there were basketball courts over there, but it's like, 13 feet from the property line of number 89 and the neighbors there, and you wonder about the nuisance of that being. I'm also expressed some concern about the removal of the trees. I thought the arborist, John Nugent, did a great job, at least detailing that. And I think that's kind of lacking in the plans here. I'd like to see something similar done on that. This kind of gets a better count, because I think, well, I know there's additional trees over there by the president's house, and there's some other ones in there, but I do have concerns that I think additional trees are being removed, as I think one of the other board members, I think it was Matthew, I'm not certain. Anyway, had mentioned about, on the north and west sides of the property. And I also echo that with Raj, that I would like to see some better renderings of the thing, that ones that look more directly south of each of the houses from Highland Parkway, or directly to the property lines from Summit Drive and from Greenview and from Highland Avenue of the whole project. It just don't seem, accurate, and it would give us a better scale of that. And so that's all I have, I think. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Abel.
Okay, next up is Bill Skillard. And Bill, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and the chair will swear you in.
Hi, Bill. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you. I'll swear you in. Bill Skillard, do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great, thank you. I'll set the timer. We're ready for 3 minutes.
Okay, I somehow failed to send all my comments in yesterday. I thought I had, so I'm going to bounce around a bit here and just try to cover some bases. Yeah, to build on the disappointment that others have expressed, I was heartened last time this group met because 5 of 6 of the members said things about retaining the primacy of Strong Hall and the existing buildings over the new buildings. And as far as I can tell, the heights of Building 100 is taller than 90% of Strong Hall, and Building 200 is absolutely going to tower over Trevor Eaton, which is in front of it. The renderings of that last time around did no justice because a tree concealed Trevor Eaton's eaves entirely. An additional concern is this lighting issue. 13 years ago, when the Planning Commission approved the lighting on the east side parking lot expansion, they specified low level and no spill lighting because our neighborhood is deliberately dark next to it. They were supposed to share plans, which they didn't end up doing because the plans changed. And ever since I've been assured by the city planner in 2019, because this came up again, that they're all aware of it over there and they're working on it and the code enforcement is working on it. And my understanding is that because I live in Brighton, if one of my neighbors on Greenview or Highland Parkway were to complain about these lights, which they can see and affect their nighttime vision, that something would be done immediately. But to hear that this is going to be a precedent for lighting throughout campus, I mean, everybody, I believe it was the Planning Commission meeting in 2019 when I heard something to the extent, when the question was asked, that the applicant's representative said something like there's existing lighting which has no issues. This lighting has serious issues. The campus is visible at night entirely when the lights are on. It's a beautiful environment, and it's these glare bombs coming down the hills at you, and that you can't get away from, that blind you. It has destroyed the nighttime environment on Lower Summit Drive, and I hate to think of what it could do to the backyards of my neighbors on Highland Parkway who are going to back up to the lights from those buildings in that parking lot. Also, back in 2009, I just want to drive home the point about the Olmsted's influence on the historic grounds being preserved. I don't think there shouldn't be retaining walls visible from the site or the central campus that aren't like the existing retaining walls on campus that are parts extensions of buildings, the interface of the inside and outdoor of the buildings. In 2009,
Mr. Skillard, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're beyond actually the 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too. I have to keep it going.
Thank you for your time. There's really so much to discuss here. I'm sorry I didn't get my comments in. I think I sent them to the site planning by mistake, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
I do believe, Bill, your comments were included. I can verify that. In the meantime, we can move the next person in, who is Bob Thompson. And FYI, Chris, Bob is listed as the official neighborhood contact on the NSC's list as the Highland Park Neighborhood Association. So he gets 10 minutes if he wants.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Thompson, can you hear me?
I can.
There you are. I'll need to swear you in. Bob Thompson, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. We're ready for you. Thank you.
Okay. Let me start by saying I'm the chair of the Highland Park Neighborhood Association, and I attended the staff meeting just prior to this hearing, and I must respectfully disagree with Attorney Worth's position on what may be reviewed at this hearing. PD 21, when approved, only established the guidelines and parameters that the project needed to stay within, similar to any other zoning code. For example, it did not establish a hard and fast location of building 100. For example, exact measurements from the lot lines to the building footprint. It did establish setbacks. And obviously the building has to stay within the parameters of those setbacks. Obviously, any change that's less impactful to the historic site and surrounding neighborhoods is allowable within the guidelines set by PD 21 and the overall zoning code. And I do want to draw the attention to the guidelines that all of the board is aware of, and that's what you're charged with actually accomplishing as a preservation board. You are to consider visual compatibility, new and existing buildings, structures, appurtenances which are moved, reconstructed, materially altered, or repaired shall be visually compatible with adjacent buildings, public ways and places to which they are visually related in terms of height, rhythm of spacing in buildings on streets, roof shapes, scale of building, and directional expression of front elevation. All of those things, Council Worth seems to want you to skip over, even though that's part A of the appropriateness standards when you apply for a certificate of appropriateness. I understand that this hearing is only to provide input. Even though the certificate of appropriateness is not being issued tonight, the same guidelines should apply, and the board's authority should be respected and not limited. As chairperson of the HPNA, Highland Park Neighborhood Association, I've held 6 neighborhood meetings over the past 2 weeks regarding site plan review and preservation board application for input on this project. The HPNA understands the importance of redeveloping this site. Unfortunately, it will not support the current plan in its present form. The HPNA maintains that this property is a true jewel of the city of Rochester and should be treated as such. It is possible to create a design that's sensitive to its history, landmark grounds, and buildings. It is possible to create a design that's in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. In fact, that design was suggested by the Rochester Preservation Board in July of 2019. Ideas such as lowering the height of buildings, designing parking around the perimeter, replacing the mid-century building, and thereby expanding the buildable area were all cast aside. The neighborhood association is in alignment with those constructive suggestions of the Preservation Board. The developers totally ignored the recommendations concerning building alignment, setback, and height that the Preservation Board presented in July of 2019. Further, the Allington Forest Design Landscape, which also holds landmark status and has not been rescinded, was largely replaced in the new plans for areas north of Strong Hall. The primacy of the historic buildings is now endangered by the increased heights of the two new proposed buildings. Specifically, with respect to recent changes made to the plan, there are many concerns, many of which are contained in the letter that I forwarded earlier. It all starts with accurate perspectives that were not included in the application. It seems that the street perspectives from Highland, South Goodman, Highland Parkway, and the other surrounding streets didn't include an illustration of the building in context, the future buildings in context with the existing site. Additionally, parking was increased. The roof deck on building 100 and 200 was added, which will increase noise to the neighborhoods below. They also diminish the landmark building's importance and will impact the surrounding neighborhood, which is low-density residential. The 2034 plan included a trail connecting Cobb's Hill to Highland Park along the north ridge of the property. With this plan, that isn't a possibility, and additional details are included in the email that I submitted. The RPB, the Preservation Board, is charged with protecting Rochester's heritage and the characteristics of its historic neighborhoods. It's asked to evaluate the design of future construction to ensure those historic elements and surrounding neighborhoods are preserved and enhanced. The HPNA once again asks the Preservation Board to insist the developer follow its recommendations and be sensitive to the neighborhood's priorities before the consideration of a certificate of appropriateness, which will be requested. I might add that it's really frustrating that it seems, I guarantee you that the City Council never weighed a decision on a certificate of appropriateness on this. And it was going to rely on the Preservation Board to do its job properly, as it does with all other landmark parcels in the city, to do the right thing. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Matt, do we have any other folks that wanted to say anything?
Two additional things. I just wanted to confirm the commenter before Mr. Thompson had made reference to not getting his comments in time, but I just wanted to confirm that he did. Bill Skillard, and they were included to the board and posted on the city's website. The other item is that the first commenter, John Morgan, I'm going to kick this to the board for their determination, has requested, he didn't realize how to unclick his video button and he wanted to make one additional comment, but I will kick that up to the board if.
I'm fine with it, as long as any of the members have a problem with it. Okay, we're fine with that, Matt, sure.
Okay, just advise him that his time had already come up and. Okay, John, you can go ahead and unmute and put your video on.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I didn't know how to unmute the unmute and then do the video thing. So I really appreciate your time, and I'll be brief. Like I mentioned before, my family has been here for 3 generations continually. We've been paying taxes on this neighborhood for 94 years. I really have serious concerns about how much additional traffic is going to be on South Goodman Street where our kids are. I think there's just no way you're going to be able to see and appreciate the original majestic buildings in the way they are because of these proposed additions. Again, you know, we have sewer problems in this area. The sewer, you know, greatly overflows at times, and with the addition of these proposed buildings, it will only make it so much worse. I really believe that there are other locations that would be much more suitable, that don't cut through such a densely populated residential area. And, you know, for so many of these concerns and for so many of the concerns that the other neighbors have brought tonight, I ask that the Preservation Board would not approve that these buildings would be made. And this is only a small microcosm of all the neighbors and all from really from South Clinton to beyond Mount Hope Avenue and all the neighborhoods, all the way down to 490 and beyond. I've talked to so many of the neighbors and not one has expressed a positive thought or view. That we all think that it's not healthy for the neighborhood. The noise level is going to be high. The lighting will be bad, and we just think, especially the increase of traffic on South Goodman Street, which is already congested, where there's a lot of accidents. The neighborhood cannot handle. And I think that there will be additional accidents and fatalities. And I would just ask you to please take all these things seriously into consideration. The builder won't have to live with this project long after it would be done, but we would. I have no plans to leave the neighborhood. Like I said, my family's been paying taxes here for almost 100 years. And so we think that the eroding from the hill, which would be the North Hill, right behind Highland Parkway, could have very detrimental consequences in the years to come. There's the hill is already eroding badly, you see, in ice storms. The trees fall on the houses, and so that hill is very steep, and I think it could be very, very detrimental to the neighbors in the future. So when I got this notice that you sent,
John, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've already did give you the 3 minutes. I just
Yes.
don't want this to become a precedent and trying to be as fair as possible.
Sure, I understand. So thank you so much for your time. I think you've heard my heart. So please take these things seriously into consideration. I know you will, but we don't feel that this was healthy for the neighborhood. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Matt,
I believe that concludes all of the folks who signed up to speak and provide public comment. Kate, I just want to confirm with you.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, so then we can turn it back to the applicant team.
Yep, the applicant, you can rebut anything that was said. You don't have to, but you certainly have the right to. Anyone would like to?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chairman. This is Matt Tomlinson again. We don't want to spend any time rebutting here, but I wanted to thank the board for their time and consideration of our presentation. We will take the comments relative to windows, some of the arches that Kirsten mentioned, some of the landscape buffering that David and some other board members for some landscaping, take that into consideration and come back hopefully next month if site plan findings have been completed for that certificate of appropriateness with some additional material for the board's consideration as part of that approval. So we really appreciate the board's time, the neighbors' comments, and look forward to keeping this project moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Matt, because we're not voting on anything this evening, and Tom Worth, I wanted your input here. Should we have our own private deliberation discussions or move on?
I think what we're aiming at is, to get people's comments and suggestions. So I think to the extent you have anything in addition to what you've raised already, that would be helpful to comment on. The neighbors suggested some additional ways of presenting the final application. If you agree with those, that would be good to know. If you have any other observations about what you would want in the final application, what details or presentations, there was mentions of site sections and renderings, that would be very helpful. And maybe even, since it's so voluminous already, if there are things that you don't need, that might be helpful to give guidance to the applicant to get a final application that is suitable for your review.
Thank you. I guess we could start then with Kirsten. Thoughts, anything you wanted to add?
I don't have much more to add. I'm empathetic with the neighbors. There's a lot of things I'd like to discuss, but my understanding is that that ship has sailed. I'd like to talk about density and other things, but I feel like that's not something we can discuss at this point. I think site sections would be immensely helpful. I think they speak more than renderings because a rendering shows what you want it to show. But yeah, I think some key site sections in both directions would be very helpful. I think the more we can work at what, the concealing of the parking, reducing the light as much as possible, especially any kind of spillover into the neighborhood. These are the big concerns that we still have an opportunity to work with. If you want to come to us with different material options, we'd be happy to weigh in. That's it. Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the neighbors that came out.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten. Victor Sanchez, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I definitely appreciate the neighbors that came out to speak, and I hope that developers, architects, and engineers take their comments into consideration and definitely come back with some points of views that would help clarify some of those concerns. But that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. David Matthews.
Yeah, well, for the record, I'm going to express my disappointment in our hands being tied at this, and I'll leave it at that. Our comments were, I felt, to a good degree, ignored from the 2019 meeting. But to move on, we are where we are, I guess. I think it would be immensely helpful for the site sections. I think having renderings from Highland Avenue and Goodman looking up to the hillside with the heights of the buildings, those are the most prominent views. So why can't we see those? We have great views down the center of the the center section, and it looks good. I have no problems with the development in between the historic buildings and the new buildings. I think that they've done great work there. But we should be able to see the prominent views that I drive by every day. This is my neighborhood, and I'd like to see if we're going to see those buildings over the tree lines or projecting over the top of the historic buildings. And the lighting, I agree. The pole lighting, I think, is completely inappropriate. I think it just should be brought down to wall mounted or building mounted lighting that's under extreme scrutiny from illuminating a lot of the natural area in there. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Bill Marshall, what are your thoughts? Do we have Bill on the screen, Matt or Kate?
It looks like maybe we lost him because I didn't accidentally demote him either. He's not in the attendees list. So
Gotcha.
Okay. Maybe his internet went out.
Yeah, maybe we lost connection. Okay, thank you. Gerald, your final thoughts on this for tonight.
So my final thoughts, I just want to repeat what my colleagues have said, that in many ways this has been frustrating because many of the big decisions have already been made. And I respect that. I understand that. It doesn't make it easy. I also want to thank all the neighbors who've spoken up and who have written us and have spoken passionately about this issue and who care very much about the site. It has been really helpful and stirring to hear your concerns and your hopes. Given that we're constrained tonight to talk about issues other than siting and massing, I would press the developers to think more about lighting, as Dave and Kirsten have both said. I think that's very important, especially light pollution and limiting it. I would love to see what a view from Highland Parkway looks like. and views from other areas of the new site and of the new buildings. I've already spoken on windows, so I guess we're not voting tonight, but I feel quite strongly that vinyl windows on a landmark site are inappropriate, and we should be seeing the same windows on building 100 and building 200 that we would require for any other preservation site, and that we've required for other cases tonight. So I think the windows are important. I would press hard also on the balconies, given that they're Juliet balconies and are otherwise ornamental. I think the best materials would be useful. And finally, on the bricks, when we next review this project, I think it'll be very important to get samples of the bricks and especially colors of bricks and how they compare to Stronghold. But again, I want to thank the neighbors, and I also want to thank the developers and all the people working with the developers who frankly are doing hard work, given that much of the site has been closed to development.
Thank you, Gerald. I'm next. I don't want to belabor this because all my colleagues really touched on most of the important things, in my opinion, that I would have touched on. So I'll leave it at that. Ed Kane?
I'm with you, Chris. It's all been said.
In the spirit of saving time. All right, I appreciate that. Well, thank you, neighbors, and thank you to developers, and thank you, board members. I guess that will conclude this case. Matt Simonis, if you would be so kind as to call the next case.
Yes, case number 4 tonight is file A-036-2122. Case type is a certificate of appropriateness at 20 Buckingham Street. The property is located in the R3 High Density Residential District and the East Avenue Preservation District. The applicant is the property owner, Dan Starr, and the purpose is to legalize the installation or replacement of 6 windows on the side and rear of the building.
Thank you, Matt. I did want to say that all board members did visit the site except for Bill Marshall. And is Dan Starr on with us? Dan, can you hear me?
It's not over yet. Just a second. Okay. Bill is not back on either, just as no. Okay, Dan, you are moved in now, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself and the chair will swear you in.
Hi, Dan, can you hear me okay? Dan, if you can hear me, there's a little button that says mute on the lower left side of your screen. Oh, there you go. Great. All right, so let me just swear you in. Dan Starr, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, thank you. We're ready for your presentation.
Okay, I'll keep this pretty quick because it's just a small project as far as I'm concerned. In late 2019, I replaced 6 windows on the side and rear of the building. I wasn't aware of the status of the building as being in a preservation district, which is my fault. We replaced them because they were deteriorating. Probably because the tenant who had been there before didn't properly close the storm windows in the winter, or they had just been neglected over the years. It's also on the most of them were on the south facing wall, so they get hit with the sun and the rain. So there are a couple pictures of the deterioration of around the windows. Since I didn't know that I was going to have to present this, I didn't actually take pictures before and after, which sort of explains some of the hokey pictures I had to pull from Google Earth. But there are 2 windows on the side and the back, which I'm sure you saw if you visited the site, that are part of what seems like it used to be a porch that was converted into a kitchen. Must have been many years ago. So those windows were actually already unoriginal. They were casement windows that everything about them was shot, and we replaced them with double hungs. And then there are 4 windows on the side, on the second floor, that 4 small bay windows that were replaced. And admittedly, the color does not match the original color. And if that is a problem, I propose that we replace or reinstall the storm window frames, which should hide most of that white color. And we'd paint the aluminum storm window frames the same colors as the rest of the house. And that should mitigate the problem. I think that's about it. I'll take questions.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. We'll start with Ed Kane. Ed, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't. I'll leave that to others.
Gotcha. I would be next. I really don't have any specific questions. You know, the vinyl windows, you know what, but I can talk about that during deliberations. I really don't have any questions, pointed questions. Gerald, questions?
2 questions. So yes, I did want to confirm these are vinyl windows, yes?
Yep.
Okay, and my second question is, can we look at, what is it, page 16? The top image. So I noticed it when I was at the site and I was standing on the driveway looking up. It appears the upper sashes are opaque. Those 4 upper sashes look white rather than clear. Is that accurate?
No, yeah, it's a living room or a bedroom, I think. Those are all clear. That must have been just an illusion.
So what's interesting is we get the illusion in this photo.
Yeah.
And I got the same illusion just standing there, and they didn't look like shades, because shades, you'd need to be incredibly detail oriented for 4 shades to come down to exactly the same height.
Yeah.
So I just want to state for the record, this illusion is visible in this photo, and this illusion is visible if you stand in the driveway. And yet you're saying you're absolutely certain those 4 upper sashes are clear glass like the lower sashes.
Yes, I'm positive. I think that I have a picture of from the interior of some of the other windows. Did I include those?
But it's only these 4.
Oh.
This issue didn't show up for any of the other windows. I noticed it in the driveway, and I took
Sure.
a photo, and then
Yeah.
I noticed it was still in your packet.
I get what you're saying, and I'm seeing the same thing you are, but we ordered the same windows for all of them, and you can see on the interior of that one.
This is the only interior one I see.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of blocked by the shade, but yeah, we would have no reason to get a window that would be any
so
color on the top other than clear.
So do you know what's going on in the interior of that room, that the upper sashes appear to be opaque?
There's a tenant in there, so she may have put that film that you can get on the windows. I can go in and check. She's actually moving out at the end of this month. But
okay, that would explain it. So you're telling me the windows, the glass is clear, but it's possible that some film was put on to make it opaque.
That's possible, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Gerald. We'll move on. Bill is not with us on this case. Dave Matthews, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Sanchez, any questions for the applicant?
No, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kirsten Solberg, any questions?
I'm sorry if I'm being dense here, but the description says 2 twin vinyl crank out casement windows. Image 5 looks like it's double hung. I just want to make sure I know what we're talking about. That looks
Right.
like a double hung window to me.
It is.
Okay,
Yes.
then what's the crank out window?
There are the one in image 5 replaced a crank out window, and
Oh, so that's the form. Oh, you
That's the
replaced
current.
the crank out window.
yes.
That's the current.
Mhm.
So we're really reviewing, all of the windows that we're reviewing are double hung.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kirsten. Any other questions from board members before we move on? Okay, we'll go to Matt Simonis. Matt, is there any testimony that you'd have to read into the record that has not already been posted on the city's website?
No, there is no additional comment nor anyone signed up to speak.
Great, thank you. So with that, we will technically close the public portion. Put it back to Matt. You want to describe how we deliberate?
Yes, so the case for number 4 at 20 Buckingham Street is now closed. The board will now move into deliberations, at which point the board will deliberate and render a decision. There's no participation by the public or applicants.
Thank you. Let's start with Mr. Kane. What are your thoughts on this?
That's a good one. My thoughts would be different if it was the front of the building versus the side and back of the building. We wouldn't have approved these necessarily in the first place. I'm just wondering what others thought about the applicant's idea about, putting the frames back and painting those to somewhat reduce the color.
Okay. Well, I'd be next. I'm gonna be a little bit more hardcore about it. I wouldn't support this at all. Even that suggestion. I really think they look horrible, even though they're on the side and the back of the building. It's my opinion. We're a preservation board. These are vinyl windows, for God's sakes. Gerald, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I mean, we have very clear guidelines when it comes to windows. Our guidelines say that you cannot replace original windows unless they're beyond repair. We never had an opportunity to determine these beyond repair, but we have to, at this point, they've been replaced. And then it says if they're being replaced, vinyl windows are not acceptable. That wood windows are, fiberglass windows, aluminum clad wood. But our guidelines say very clearly that vinyl windows are not acceptable. The only thing that's hard about this case and that tears me up about this case is I'm willing to believe that the homeowner didn't realize that he had to come before the preservation board to do this. I hate legalization cases for that reason, because we're asking the homeowner to redo work. But if the homeowner had come in good faith with this application, I absolutely would have said no. And it doesn't seem fair to know that we would have said no had the applicant come in good faith and then retroactively approve it. So I would vote against legalizing these windows, and I would require windows that meet our standards.
Thank you. Bill's not back with us yet, and Dave Matthews.
Yeah, I ditto for what Gerald said. We had talked with a while back about trying to get these type of cases pre-vetted. If they don't meet the standards, then they shouldn't come before the board. And it puts us in a tough position when they come for legalization almost every single time. So, but I don't feel like, that's our guidelines. So, we need to stick. It can't set precedents of accepting it just because, they didn't realize. So I know it's unfortunate, but.
So I just have a request that you address. So we didn't ask the applicant, but presumably the originals windows aren't around anymore. So what would you propose as the alternative here?
I would say it's simple. It's simple. I would follow the guidelines.
The guidelines say that, keep original windows, which we don't have anymore because they took them out, or so.
Right, but then we have a list of replacement type windows that we will allow.
Yeah, so I think it asks that you just address that issue. Well, what would you require to be in there that would be appropriate?
So in the past we've accepted fiberglass, aluminum clad wood. There's a number of lines out there, Marvin, Anderson, or whatever similar to those types that come before the board and we've accepted in the past.
There is a list on the website.
So you'd like to have them come back with a proposal that factors in the guidelines.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of fashioning like coming up with a design for them that you come in keeping in mind the guidelines that
Well, I don't
window
know.
replacement.
I mean, I don't know how the board feels, but if they came back and presented an acceptable solution to staff, do we need to have this case back? If they're replacing with accepted windows in the guidelines? Just a question. I mean, we tried to alleviate some of our, workload by having that done in the past, but I don't know where we stand now. So,
Gerald?
I agree with Dave. I mean, I'd be happy deferring this to staff if all we're requiring is that the replacement windows be made out of one of the materials that we're allowed to authorize. My only question is, did any of you notice the number of the new windows? I think are one light over one light. Did any of you notice what the other second and third floor windows look like? Is that consistent with the style? Because I didn't pay attention to that. I just paid attention to the new windows.
That's why I think maybe we should review it, but I mean, I can go either way with that, having staff do it.
Yeah, I mean, what I've always asked at this point is, what does staff think? Would they be comfortable with taking this on based on what's been presented?
Matt, how do you feel about that? And then I want to get Victor's input and Kirsten's input too.
I'm comfortable with it, provided you give the direction in terms of what you're looking for. I know David had mentioned, obviously there's a number of products, wood being the base, some clad with aluminum, some clad with, I think vinyl. If you want to give direction on that, I'm happy to do it. The only other component would be to have to address what Gerald said, which is the pattern on the rest of the building. So if you were looking, so it would be first just saying it's like a base wood window clad with something, you can address that. And then if you want it to match the pattern on the rest of the building.
Okay. Victor, thoughts, please.
Yeah, I was somewhat along the same lines as Ed. I didn't love it. I was not happy to kind of see the way that it looked, but because it was where it was, I wanted to find an easier solution, but I definitely appreciate kind of the suggestions that have been made on following those guidelines. And I would definitely agree that kind of moving that direction, that as long as they're following the guidelines of the materials, that, we can defer to staff to kind of make that decision.
Great. Thanks, Victor. Kirsten, your thoughts, please.
I think they should be replaced per our guidelines, double hung if that's the case. And I was trying to look at the existing windows. I believe that the existing are painted like a beige color, so it doesn't make sense to replace them in a white either. So it would be to match whatever the existing is. I think our guidelines state pretty clearly what materials the windows can be as replacement, if I'm correct.
How would you feel, Kirsten, about staff?
I'm okay with it, as long as they can, the owner agrees to match the color of the existing too.
Okay.
It looks like the first floor has brown and then the upper floor has that beige that you were describing.
Okay.
So you'd want it to be beige?
I want it to match the existing.
On that floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the color and the number of lights should match whatever the color and number of lights is for other windows on that floor.
And then, of course, the material would be within our guidelines.
And you got double hung, so you don't have the issue of divided lights and that kind of stuff, right? So right there.
So Tom, let me ask you, should we reject this? Should we hold it? And then give the suggestion of having staff review it based on our.
Yeah, I think you can not hold it, but make a decision that fashions.
Approve on condition.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it approved on, well, because you're being asked to approve a replacement. And so yeah, you deny, to legalize the replacement. So you deny that and then approve the remedy. You know, so you did something that you can't approve, so you're giving them an alternative that you can, and it's the instructions you give the staff.
All right, so we would say reject it, but with a remedy of what we decide.
Yes.
Dave Matthews, how'd you like to give me? How'd you like to give me a motion based on that?
I'll give it a shot. For case number 4, file A-036-21-22 for a certificate of appropriateness to legalize the replacement of 6 windows on the side and the rear of the building at 20 Buckingham Street. I make a proposal that we do not accept the proposal as it stands, but are as a courtesy to the owner, the staff, city staff can make an approval if the applicant returns with windows per the Rochester Preservation Board guidelines that meets those criteria. And also if replacing those windows that they match the colors in the adjacent floor level and above.
And Dave,
And the
would it be a
pattern.
friendly amendment to also match the number of lights in the other windows on that level?
And match the number of lights, 1/1 or adjacent.
It's 1/1.
Yeah, 1/1.
Second.
Sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. So a motion was properly made by David Matthews and properly seconded by Gerald Gamm. I will call on each member for their vote. We'll start with Ed Kane. Do you vote yay or nay for this motion?
Yay.
Ed Kane votes yay. Next is me, Christopher Coretta. I vote yay for the motion. Gerald Gamm?
Yay.
Gerald Gamm votes yay for the motion. Bill is not here yet. Dave Matthews?
Yay.
Dave Matthews votes yay for the motion. Victor Sanchez?
Yay.
Victor Sanchez votes yay for the motion. And Kirsten Solberg?
Yay.
Kirsten Solberg votes yay. That's 6 unanimous votes. Thank you very much, Mr. Starr. Matt, when you're ready, we'll go to the next and last case, please.
All right, the last case this evening is case number 5, file A-037-2122. It is a certificate of appropriateness at 30 Edgerton Street, located in the R1 Low Density Residential District and the East Avenue Preservation District. The applicant is Heidi Scorzone of Maison Properties, and the purpose is to install an egress window to a proposed lower level apartment unit on the south elevation of the building. And we have Brian here with us. And I want to make one clarification, and Kate, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is related to combining 2 apartments, right?
Yes, that is correct.
That's correct, right? Okay, thank you. Perfect, thank you.
Hey, Brian, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
By the way, your staff there is great. They showed me exactly where it was, and I really appreciated that. But I'll swear you in. Brian, if you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Great. Thank you. And we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you for your time tonight. We're here this evening as we have an existing basement apartment in the building located at 30 Edgerton, for which we have been working with the city to revitalize that apartment. And during the revitalization and review with the building inspector, it was identified that in the proposed bedroom number 2, the existing window did not meet the current egress codes. So to bring that into compliance, we are proposing to replace that window with a larger egressable window that would be below grade. It will be contained in a window well that will have a cover over the top. It is on the south side of the building. It is not on the street side of the building. And in the construction of that window, we're looking at a fiberglass cladded window because of its below grade placement that we want to make sure we do put something in there that will give us some longevity, but we do understand the board's position on vinyl windows. So that's pretty much kind of what we have. It's just a one window, going to be put in a basement apartment, an existing basement apartment that is being added a second bedroom. And we just need to put a little larger window in there for the safety of our residents.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. And I did want to also say that all board members visited the site except for Bill Marshall. I'll open it up to questions for board members. We'll start with Kirsten. Kirsten, any questions?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Victor Sanchez, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. And Dave Matthews, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
You, Gerald Gam, any questions?
Yes. Did you say the window material is fiberglass?
That's what we're looking at. We had our architect work on a design for us, and he pulled a stock cross section from a manufacturer from Bowman, who manufactures and sells this as a kit, but he inadvertently dropped in, their vinyl window number and not the correct fiberglass number. So
okay, good. I appreciate you doing that. You've probably heard earlier cases. So I appreciate you doing that, and just wanted that clarified, because the image we're looking at on the screen right now says vinyl window, and everything in the presentation said vinyl window. So I appreciate that you in fact are intending to use fiberglass.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any other questions, Gerald?
Nope, that was it.
Great. I have no questions. It's pretty straightforward. And Gerald did ask the one question I had. Ed Kane?
Like you said, it's pretty straightforward. I have no questions either.
Great. Thank you. If board members have no further questions, we'll go over to Matt to see if there's any public testimony that hasn't been put on the city website that you'd like to put into record.
No public testimony written, and nothing additional for folks that signed up to speak.
Great, thank you. We will then technically close the public portion, go back to Matt. We're going to deliberate, and Matt will describe our deliberation process.
Yes, so the last case tonight, case number 5, the hearing for it has been closed, and the board will now deliberate, at which time there is no participation by the applicant or members of the public.
Thank you, sir. Start with Ed Kane. Your thoughts?
As I said, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Great, thank you. I agree, straightforward. You're really not going to see much. I would fully support it. Gerald?
I agree too. I would just put a condition on our approval that it be a fiberglass window.
Very good. Dave Matthews?
Yeah, thank you, Gerald. I agree. It's appropriate with the fiberglass. Thank you.
Victor Sanchez?
Yep, I know. I also agree with everything that's been said.
Thank you. And Kirsten?
Agree.
Great. Victor, would you like to give me a motion?
Sure. For case number 5, file number A-037-21-22, I make a motion that we approve the application as presented, with the condition that it is a fiberglass window.
Thank you.
Yay. Yay.
Okay, so you seconded.
Second.
All right. It's late. I understand. It's our last case. So
You know what
a
I
motion,
mean.
a motion has been properly made by Victor Sanchez and properly seconded by Kirsten Solberg. I will call out on each board member for their vote. Ed Kane, do you vote yay or nay?
Yay.
Ed Kane votes yay. I'm next. Christopher Coretta, I vote yay for the motion. Gerald Gam?
I vote yay.
Gerald Gam votes yay. David Matthews?
I vote yay. Thank you.
Thank you. David Matthews votes yay. Victor Sanchez?
Yay.
Victor Sanchez votes yay. And Kirsten Solberg?
Yay again.
Jim votes yay again. That's 6 unanimous votes. So approved. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And that would conclude